the chosen one. Be brave, Professor. Be brave like my mother.
How do you feel?
Excellent. Really excellent.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 4, Horace, Slughorn. I'm excited because we have both Molly and Jenn back again today.
Hello. Hello.
And I'm excited to see what they have to say about Mr. Slughorn, Professor Slughorn. We do have a shout out it's from Worlds Apart Podcast. Worlds Apart Pod on Twitter, who gave us a comment saying, just had to give you a follow on Spotify. Love the work that you do. Finally got myself a wand when visiting London. Thank you so much for the follow on Spotify, and thank you for the nice words. This chapter is about Horace Slughorn. So we start off with Albus. We start and end with Albus and Harry having moments. We get Albus and Harry kind of going off to that flighty temptress adventure, and we end with them in a broom closet. Flighty temptress of adventure broom closet.
Smelly broom closet.
Smelly, spidery filled
Yes.
broom closet. And sandwiched in the middle is Horace Slughorn. So we start out with Albus and Harry setting off from Pivot Drive, and you get Jenn will have comments on Harry feeling a little embarrassed about the interactions that occurred in their last conversation. I know you and Julie particularly were not thrilled with Harry's behavior in Order of the Phoenix.
No.
And now you're having Harry regretting some of that behavior.
I'm so proud of him. That's growth. It's growth. He's maturing.
That's fair. Although, to be fair, Albus did say, like, yeah, you know, you could smash my possessions and stuff. You're not nearly as angry with me as you should be. Like, you don't even know how mad you actually should be here. Yeah, he feels embarrassed over their last encounter because he's, again, yelled and smashed a bunch of his prized possessions, which I'm sure Albus was just like, after he left, he's like, and flick. And everything, like, just, you know, magically repaired and put themselves back, so.
I think it's a really good example of his character progression. And I do...
Harry's?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do really like it because I spent all of last book hating Harry.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling like he was being immature. And
I'm
like,
aware.
I'm happy, to the surprise of no one on this podcast. But like, this was such a good start where it's like, yes, like we're moving on from this, you know? Like he's showing some level of self-awareness. I'm proud of him.
We do get Albus giving Harry permission to use magic. Keep in mind now, he's the head of the Wizengamot now. So he's, he's the head of the Wizengamot again. And Albus gives him permission to use magic if they are attacked. However, that won't be necessary because we're not going to be attacked. Harry goes, why? Because you're with me. You're not going to get attacked. You're with me. Humble brag, solid by Albus. I don't know if either of you remember, but a long, long time ago, we had a debate on which form of magical transportation you would choose. Floo powder, broom, apparition. I think there was probably one other one that I'm forgetting at the moment. But now that we get a description of how apparition actually feels, are we still high on apparition as a mode of transport? Or would you venture off into something else?
I would still do apparition. I mean, that's awesome.
Just being able to pop in and pop out?
Heck yeah. That would be so convenient.
Even if you're feeling like you're being squeezed through a small tube and pressure inside your head and the whole bit?
Well, yeah, it makes sense because you're probably doing some kind of beyond our understanding capacity.
Travel through
physics.
space and time. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh.
Like, it's probably gonna not be, like, the most comforting thing, so... But I'm willing to trade that for convenience.
What if you have, like, a sinus infection or a migraine? Because
that's what I was going to compare it to. Like, it can't be worse than that.
That's fair. But, well, does it make that feeling worse?
But then you can apparate to a...
Or do you probably just...
Yes.
Right.
And get your migraine medication.
I was going to say, like, well, you could probably take a potion for the sinus infection or the migraine anyway. That'll probably clear it up.
Yeah. I would infinitely rather apparate than have to deal with heights because heights are terrifying.
Going back to the other minister chapter, the minister of magic just flu powders in, like, doesn't that leave you with like a soot or like grime or dirt from the flu powder
Maybe
and
if
the
you-
ash?
Maybe it's like if you do it enough, it's not a big deal.
You do like a little impervious spell before, and you like that doesn't affect you as much.
The problem with, I don't know the answer to that, but I can say that the problem with flu powder and brooms are that they need extra steps. All I need for apparition is just myself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I feel like there's another form that I'm missing, and I can't remember what it was.
Flying car.
Flying car is definitely another one. You could do that, or the night bus.
Oh, yeah,
The
night
night bus is a nice. Our creature would be another one. So
Yeah.
hippogriff, thestral, something like that.
Technically, because you still haven't played Hogwarts Legacy yet.
I have not.
One of the things you can do is you get like a hippogriff mount.
I want it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
See, you two have played, and I'm way behind. You know, it would be fun. I don't know how to do it, and that would take a lot of effort on my part because I've never done anything for Twitch before. But like to Twitch stream, like one of us or all of us somehow, like. So I mean, it would be interesting to have like a little Twitch stream of
That would be
us
neat.
actually playing. That'd be fun. Has anybody actually? Have you guys done anything Twitch related?
No, but I can. I don't have people I can ask.
I like it. All right, future plans for. By the way, Jen, sorry, this is a side tangent.
No worries.
Our apologies. Molly and I, because you're on the podcast, we came up with a wonderful idea that featured a Harry Potter themed escape room.
Oh yeah.
So, for those that don't know, behind the scenes, we will actually, as a podcast, go and do a Harry Potter escape room here very shortly in the coming weeks. We might mention that on the podcast or put it out on our socials.
I think technically the day that this drops.
Oh,
we'll
this
be
very episode?
Yeah, this episode
You-
we'll be doing.
you might be right.
So when you guys are listening to this, there's a non-zero chance we will be escaping the Harry Potter room.
So I'm sure we'll put up a picture on our Instagram of
Yeah.
all of us together that did it, which will be awesome. But we came up with an idea for Harry Potter escape room
Okay.
during the Spinner's End chapter,
Okay.
and I want to run it by you and see what you think. So if you remember the Spinner's End, where Snape's located, you enter his house, and it seems like it's just one room with library, kind of like bookshelves everywhere, and then they mention specifically that there are at least two hidden rooms off of that room.
Yeah.
You can very easily set up this encounter with, like, you're a member of the Order of the Phoenix, you're infiltrating this Death Eater residence, and you need to get out in 60 minutes or else he'll be back.
That would be great.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
That lends itself to it. Very,
I don't
very.
love it. I love the idea.
Yeah.
Jen, we gotta do this.
All right, let's do it.
We'll franchise in and we'll make it done.
You guys spearhead this, yeah.
For all we know, the Harry Potter escape room that we're doing is essentially this.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be
was just-
really funny.
That'd be crazy.
Per Molly episodes, we had to have at least one random offshoot tangent.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go.
Perfect.
We might have more. Who knows?
You probably will.
Probably will.
The chapter is young.
The chapter's very young. Albus does mention before they get to the wonderful, charming village of Budley Babberton that Voldy has started to employ occlumency against Harry. And again, I'm just going to throw out the idea of Voldy learning occlumency. Is this an endeavor he ventured on alone? Or do you think he invited... I can't, as I'm even saying this, I can't even fathom the idea of Voldy inviting anyone to invade his mind, but to try to get that practice? Or do you think he literally just read it from a book and he's so unbelievably talented, he was just like, I can read this from a book and just do it? Well.
I mean, in my headcanon, I wanted it to be Snape and Bellatrix, like, teaching him. I think that would have been pretty great.
Well, unless you have trusted advisors.
Right, but I think he's just so smart that...
I
That
can't...
would have been amazing.
I just can't envision him just being like, hey, Avery, come here a second. Or like, you know what I mean? I can't envision him wanting to do that.
I took the less fun approach of just thinking he knew it when he like taught himself when he was in Hogwarts.
Yeah.
and like had known it for a while.
I-
I would infinitely prefer a universe where like Snape and Bellatrix are the ones trying to teach him, but
Yeah.
I think that scenario that you guys brought up of him probably being so talented, he probably just read this probably at Hogwarts and was like, this is actually really valuable. I can use this, and then just did it. But I could also see him, if he did invite someone to invade his mind, he'd find like one of a better, very much like a Gilderoy Lockhart thing of like, who's really good at a certain thing. But instead of like stealing that ability, he'd just kill him at the end. Like, oh, you were successful in invading my mind. I failed at blocking you out. You can't know what you just found out. Dead.
yeah. I guess I would just have a hard time thinking he got to this point without already knowing it.
You're probably right. So I guess we'll chalk it up to he's really good at magic. But yeah, that's what I thought of with Voldy employing occlumency. And how often does he have to do that? Do you think he does that regularly around his Death Eaters?
I would have thought he would be doing it a lot more regularly. Like, I don't understand why, if this was a thing that he could do, he wouldn't have done it to Harry already.
I feel like if you're right about him learning this at Hogwarts, he probably tried to employ it against Dumbledore.
I would imagine, like, teachers in general.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine that's probably where he started that.
Yeah.
The other part is, if you're a Death Eater and you try, and you get caught, like, that doesn't end well for you.
No.
So maybe he sets that example real quick, really early on in the process.
Most likely.
Also, the other thing is, we've learned that Voldy is he can also be temperamental. So, as Snape told us, you have to eliminate all emotion. So, do you think the Death Eaters, like, notice him calmly sitting in a chair, calmly walking around whatever house he's in? They're like, something's different. He's not, like, rampaging. He's not killing. He's not, like, torturing. He's very zen today. He must be doing something.
Well, maybe the anger is his like zen point.
Maybe that is his zen point.
That's how he zens out.
You know what? That's actually
love
pretty
it.
fair. That's a fair point.
I love it.
It's like a Bruce Banner Hulk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what's my
murder
secret?
Calms him down.
I'm always angry. Yeah. That's a fair point.
I need to calm down. Kill someone.
Exactly.
Oh, that's true.
I
Okay.
feel like all of these ideas would really lend themselves to like a webcomic of like
Probably.
what's happening on the Death Eater side during all of these books.
Right.
We get to Budley Babberton, and which is just a fun town name to say. Albus says you can't usually just apparate inside wizard buildings. One, because it's incredibly rude, but two, most residences are protected against that. They have some anti-apparition charm or whatever. Not just Hogwarts. So if you thought it was just Hogwarts' special thing, it's generally most places. Like, do you think Honeydukes has it so you can't just apparate in there and steal like candy?
Most likely.
Like something like that? I would
I
imagine.
like most stores
Right.
too, like, so that does make sense.
Yeah. So we do learn that. We do get some Albus takes on Rufus, which is really, really interesting. Albus says that Rufus is certainly capable. He's more decisive and forceful than Fudge. He's a man of action, and he doesn't underestimate Voldy. All, I dare say, complimentary things towards Rufus. He seems to have a pleasant disposition towards Rufus. However, Harry does notice that he doesn't exactly see a window to pry for more, even though he feels like there's something unsaid here. So he just drops it. And if Albus is that complimentary of someone, why do you think he's just like unwilling to go that extra step of, I approve of Rufus as Minister of Magic?
I think Dumbledore wants Harry to make his own judgments without his influence with certain things.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you
That's my
think?
take on it.
He definitely does encourage him to do that
Yeah.
a lot for various things. I sometimes wonder about Dumbledore's word choices, and
Do you think there's some double talk going on here?
I'm not necessarily sure that. Maybe a little bit of double talk in this, because I feel like sometimes with Dumbledore, the things that he doesn't say are as important as the things that he does say.
Okay, yeah.
And he's been very emphatic with like trusting Snape. So when I read this, my take on it is he doesn't approve of Rufus, but he's not going to badmouth Rufus to Harry. Because I do think that goes into what Mollie's saying of like he wants Harry to make his own decisions, but I think him not explicitly saying it is also
saying
because he also just doesn't like he doesn't want to be like, man, this guy's terrible, because he knows if he says that Harry's going to like, okay, we are anti-Rufus, and he doesn't want to influence Harry, but at the same time he's not going to tell Harry like, oh yeah, he's great, when he doesn't think that he is.
Right. I think it's an interesting choice of words because he's, like I said, very complimentary on the whole. I do like your acknowledgement of like, well, things left unsaid kind of say a pretty clear message. I have to wonder, is this like an instance of two things? One, you don't complain down, you always complain up. And I guess there's really no complaining up from Albus, but I guess complain neutrally, at least it's the Minister of Magic. I mean, it's, you know, it's a figurehead that you have to respect. You might not like. So maybe this is a neutral complaining instead of complaining up. So maybe it's a little bit of that where he doesn't feel like it's appropriate to badmouth the Minister of Magic to a kid, no matter who that kid is. But also, too, is it this instance of adult drama? Like, we had all this child drama in book 5 in Order of the Phoenix where, you know, kids are being kids. But adults have drama too. And you think Albus is like, look, he's a smart, capable guy. But he stops short because he's like, hey, I disagree with him on a couple of different things. I'm not going to get into that business with you. We have our issues. Like, maybe it's just one of those things. And that's why he just stops short of like, I endorse Rufus for Minister of Magic. He's like, he's good. He's not deserving of the job. He deserves it. We just disagree. But he can't say we disagree because then that invites more questioning from Harry. And he just kind of wants to leave it be.
I wonder also, too, if he just didn't want to keep going with it because he didn't want to talk to Harry about it. Like what you're saying, like it didn't leave an opening, and that was intentional.
Yeah, just answered the question and left it hanging.
One or two, just like if Dumbledore just thinks objectively about it anyway. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, they're just different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might just be more focused on everything else to just say, it's another guy.
Right.
So, there's a meme, well, not really a meme, but so I follow the Harry Potter subreddit, and I see funny things on it occasionally. And there's one that I've seen pop up a bunch of times where it's a quote that sums up the entire series, and it's Harry didn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that vein, when I was reading this, one of the things that Dumbledore says to Harry in this chapter is, yes, of course, I haven't told you. I'm like, if there's one thing that sums up Dumbledore throughout this series, I feel like it's that.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That is very true. We just got Albus's opinions on Rufus. We also get his opinions on the pamphlet of things to watch out for at home. And he gives his 2 cents. And he's like, did you find that helpful? And Harry's like, not really. And he's like, yeah. Which I think is a little unfair for Albus. I mean, I thought the pamphlet was decent. It wasn't like a negative impact, I felt, right?
I think it's good for the average wizard.
Right.
Probably not helpful for Harry.
Yeah, that's
I would
fair.
agree with that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's not helpful, right? I don't know. I'm using a lot of double negatives. We do find out that Albus's favorite jam is raspberry, and I love how he set that whole thing up too. He's like, "Yeah, the security questions are good, but if I was me, impersonating me, I would research my favorite jam." And I'm like, this is such a Dumbledore way to explain this.
I love everything about that.
I know.
I get that. And, you know, some of the Death Eaters might do that. I think, you know, your Lucius, I think, would be smart enough to do it. Bellatrix might, although she might not care to get that deep into it either. She might just kill you. But
Probably.
I can't imagine Crab and Goyle are like, okay, what's his favorite jam? Do we have an answer for that? What's his favorite candy? Do we know his candy? Favorite color? Anybody? Anybody in the room? Like, I can't imagine them sitting around, like, having this meeting, like this Death Eater meeting at a conference table, being like, does anybody know his favorite animal? No?
I like the idea, though, of, like, so what do you need to know his favorites of in order to truly impersonate Albus Dumbledore?
Yeah.
He definitely seems to have a sweet tooth, because all of his passwords are candy. He's talking about jams. Like, he definitely likes sweet things. But then, like, what else? Like, does he have a favorite, like, color pair of knitted socks? Like, I want to know more about.
Do you know that scam that runs every now and then through, like, Facebook or whatever social media site you use, where it's like, your dog's name, your like whatever, like that scam that they have you answer and then they just use it because it's generally the common security question type things. Do you think the Death Eaters would just send out like
a mass email?
Yeah, like just spam owl like everybody and see if they get responses back?
I would love that. I also was thinking about, like, again, Lucius, Crab, Goyle, all sitting there with vision boards of what Dumbledore's favorite jams and socks and candies are.
Well, while they're having their outdoor leisurely activities at Azkaban, like bocce ball or kickball or whatever they're doing now, maybe Voldy has set them up with this side gig of just, can you send out owls, a certain number of owls every day to
figure out what everybody's favorites are.
Exactly, yeah. He just sends them like a huge packet of like names and like
surveys.
All right, so Albus's favorite jam is raspberry. What do we got? Real quick, round the horn. Favorite jam. What you got?
Black cherry.
Ooh, black cherry. Okay.
That's a good one. I really like. I respect raspberry as a favorite.
Raspberry is very good.
I don't really know though that I'm a jam person.
What?
Like, I don't know when I've had jam.
Little jam on some worm biscuits.
Oh,
so good.
Butter.
Butter's also good, but you gotta get a little bit of jam sometimes.
I've never done the jam thing. I've always.
Lindenberry's good too.
Which one?
That does sound good.
Lindenberry.
Ooh, okay.
Like the IKEA.
Yeah.
So
for those who have been to IKEA,
for those that have been to Nashville in Tennessee, there's this one cafe that I used to love going to. It's still there, Loveless Cafe.
Ooh.
And they had they're known for their like Southern style cooking and whatever. And they put out some biscuits. And they put out a sampler of different jams. My personal favorite, strawberry. Love strawberry jam. But they'd have strawberry, blackberry, and peach. And they were all good. All of them were great. So that's Jams with Hogwarts, a podcast. What's your favorite jam? You let us know.
We promise this is not spam.
That is correct. We're not trying to scam you based on your jam.
No.
Yes, it's not a jam scam.
Oh my god.
You called it, Molly. This was not the one and only random tangent.
Yep.
You hit it. Let's do an abrupt change of topic, very breakneck speed. Okay.
Perfect.
In Fury.
Very hard.
Very hard change. There's really no transition there, so I'm just gonna go there. We get a little bit more information. Harry's like, yeah, the pamphlet was meh, but I do have a question. This Inferi thing, they kind of talk about it, but they really don't talk about it. What is it? And Albus goes into this very dark segment of magic where Inferi are dead bodies being bewitched to do that dark wizard's bidding. And then he adds in that during the First Wizarding War, Voldy had killed enough people in that time to make an army of them. Like, we're talking like a Walking Dead, Last of Us, like kind of army of dead walking to further that army, I guess. It did make me think that I have a great pitch for a prequel series. And no, it's not a Walking Dead, Last of Us, Harry Potter spin. I've always been a fan of, like, for this HBO show that's going to come out, I was thinking, oh, HBO, maybe they make it a little bit more harder edged because it's HBO and they probably can get away with that. However, we're still talking about Harry Potter and it's teenage kids, so like how hard can you really make this edge to it? This is where you can make this a hard edge. Make it a prequel series about the First Wizarding War. Have it just be the adults, the First Order of the Phoenix, the Death Eaters, adults in the Wizarding world, and you could make this dark. You could make this like an RMA style, like it's a war.
Yeah.
And this war, from everything we've heard about it, from Order of the Phoenix members talking about it, like Moody showing Harry a picture and half of them are dead. It's like, you can make it really good, I think. So it seems to be a little, the First Wizarding War at least seems to be a little more aggressive, at least than how this is starting out. Granted, this is just starting out, but that First Wizarding War sounds brutal. And especially if he's making an army of Inferi, like, that could be good. That could be really good.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. That's just my pitch. So far in this episode, we've clearly pitched an escape room and a prequel series.
Yes.
And a Harry Potter series of jams.
Yes.
Harry Potter flavored jams. I think we could do all three businesses.
We could definitely pull this off.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Inferi?
Creepy.
Continuing with the hard transitions.
Yes. Yeah, creepy is I'll second that.
Yeah.
Creepy.
I mean, is that part of the fear that Voldy exerted on people? Because not only is it the fear of him killing you, torturing you, killing you, it's also the fear of, he can reanimate your body to do other evil acts. Like, it doesn't even end at death for you then. That's part of the innate fear factor of Voldy and his Death Eaters at that time. Was it goes beyond that.
That's a pretty big psychological.
Yeah. I mean, that would freak out a lot of people. Like, even the best and strongest witches and wizards, I'd imagine, would be like, can I not have that result?
Yeah.
Like, even if I'm fairly confident in my abilities, that would still freak me out. Like, that's still a plausible ending to me.
Right.
I would not want that.
Reminds me of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, again, is another hard series. I don't know. It would just add. And again, going back to our Wormtail discussion of like, well, Voldy knocks on your door. What are you going to do? It's easy to say I would die to protect my friends and family. But if he's got armies of dead bodies walking and there's the prospect of you being one of them.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. Because then he might use you to kill your friends anyway, one way or the other, which would be awful. And then, like, so that scene I'm thinking you're thinking of in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Sorry, spoilers for Game of Thrones if anybody's not watched Game of Thrones years after it's over. Like Hardhome, I think it's Hardhome, right? In the north.
Yep.
And you literally see changes where a person is killed and then they immediately reanimate.
Yeah.
And now they are attacking you immediately.
Yes.
Like, that's horrifying.
It's terrifying, and that's a terrifying episode. So.
Yeah. No, I think the Game of Thrones call is really good. And the Hard Home better than the Battle of Winterfell, because no one could see what was going on in that episode anyway.
Oh my god, yeah.
This has been Game of Thrones talk on Hogwarts, the podcast.
We've already gone a lot of directions.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything on Inferi, in White Walkers,
I'm starting to get a clearer picture of this HBO series that you're pitching. So
yeah, well, the prequel, the one that they're putting out there, who knows what that's going to be like? Yeah. Hopefully, a fair representation of the book. Maybe. Let's hope. So we get Horace Slughorn, and I cannot wait to get Jen's thoughts on Horace. But we arrive at his house, and it's an interesting kind of setup. We have door broken in, furniture tossed around. There's an overturned armchair. There's blood on the walls. And Albus, being Albus, just decides to poke the armchair hard with his wand, and it turns into a large man with a walrus-like mustache, which I appreciate that detail. And Slughorn was like, what gave me away? And Albus is like, well, if the Death Eaters were really here and they really wanted to do damage, they would have left a dark mark above the house. And Horace was like, I knew I missed something. Is it illegal to cast a dark mark? Would that be against the law? Casting the dark mark?
Well, I only thought the Death Eaters knew how to do it.
That's true, too.
You know?
I don't know if are they the only ones that would know that, or I don't know.
Wouldn't that attract more attention?
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah, because if there was any other witch or wizard in the area,
Right.
Aurors would be on that house very quickly
Right.
because they'd Accio and Auror, and they just fly out of the Auror's office.
To the vicinity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would cause a little bit of distress.
Yeah, I only thought that the Death Eaters knew how to conjure the dark mark.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just Death Eaters that know that particular spell, but either way, I would imagine that just casting that dark mark would not be exactly looked highly upon. Because it's almost like a false alarm, too. If you're just, like, casting it, I mean, even in the scene where it was casted in Goblet of Fire, that caused a whole amount of Aurors and ministry officials, like, on that spot, meaning business immediately. So I can't imagine it's super, like, it's not exactly pulling a fire alarm, even though that's technically illegal, too. But it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, right.
So, I don't know. The idea that he'd just be like, I forgot to cast a dark mark. My bad. You got me. I feel like it's a little weird. But then Slughorn and Albus tag team and clean up the entire house that was trashed. And they do it so swiftly and so simply. Could you imagine just the ability to do that? It'd be one of the best things about being like a witch or wizard.
That'd be awesome.
Flick of the wand and my whole like apartment or condo or house is just like completely cleaned. It would make dusting so much easier.
That'd be amazing.
And the ability to go from one place to another in the blink of an eye would be great. My travel game would be so much better. Speaking of travel, there's a transition. Look at that. That was a good transition. Not my Jam to Inferi transition. Slughorn has been traveling. He's been moving for a year straight, staying no longer than a week in one location. And I think this is important because it obviously establishes that Slughorn is not a fan of Voldy or Death Eaters. He feels like he is a target and does not want to be found. So that's just an interesting note. Albus tries to recruit Slughorn to be a professor at Hogwarts, to which he replies, Albus, I'm not really a fan of how you treat your teachers at Hogwarts. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, what you did to that Umbridge woman was terrible. And Albus was like, well, she did run afoul of our centaur herd. And would you have walked into the forest and called them a bunch of half-breeds? And then Slughorn goes, quote, idiotic woman, I never liked her anyway. Never liked her. To which Harry laughs. And then all the attention turns to Harry, and then Dumbledore's like, you know what? I'm actually going to go in the other room for a minute. Mm-hmm. Which is such a slick move by Albus.
He's smooth.
His attempt to read the room is amazing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
He also would be a great wingman, I think.
Yeah.
Because
I could see that.
Get the attention out of the person that you want, and then suddenly you're gone.
Yep.
Great wingman. But anyway. I could do tangents too. I've done a lot. That gets Slughorn's attention onto Harry. So we get into the Slughorn and Lily of it all. Lily Evans, as he knows her. But he does obviously know that she is Harry's mom because he gives the sweet line that Harry's heard a million times before of, wow, you look a lot like your father. Except for your eyes, you have your mother's eyes. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. He does say that Lily was one of his favorite students, one of the brightest that he ever taught. And he calls her vivacious, charming, and a little cheeky. So he thinks very fondly of her. He also says it's a little surprising that she was Muggle-born and how bright she was, which Harry takes exception to. And then Slughorn doubles back and is like, whoa. Don't take me for prejudiced. I'm really not. I just said one of my favorite students ever was Muggle-born.
I get where Harry's coming from in that, but I didn't get that impression from Slughorn when he says it. Like, I felt like he said it in, like, a pretty neutral or just, like, offhanded, like, oh, isn't it funny how that happens sometimes? As in, like, because the general expectation, I think, for most people would be, if you have pure wizard blood, you're going to be the most maybe apt to pick it up or pick it up faster
Right.
or whatever because you're exposed to it. So it is kind of a curiosity that, like, oh, yeah, isn't it funny how sometimes Muggle-borns just, like, demolish purebloods? Like, I don't think he meant it as, like, a...
No, I think it's like you're saying, I think it's a general witch wizard take in the wizarding world that's...
He's making wizard small talk.
Yeah.
Like...
I agree. I think it's a very... He means it as a offhand, just like a commentary, not so much a judgment.
Yeah.
But I also get where Harry's coming from, too, because, I mean, it's almost like he's a Muggle-born. He grew up without magic in his life, and obviously he brings up Hermione as like, oh, I know a Muggle-born. She's the best in our class.
Well, I think, too, just the reputation of, unfortunately, Slytherins being all about purebloods, I think that's where Harry's mind automatically jumps to.
I think that does factor in quite a bit here to where Harry jumped the gun.
Yeah.
Because Slughorn does mention that right before this that he was the head of Slytherin House when he was there.
Right.
So that automatically, and this is talk about being prejudiced. Yeah. Harry immediately jumps to, you must be racist. I think that's where he goes. And then he does mention Sirius offhand of like, I had all of Sirius Black's family and they were all brilliantly talented. Would have been nice to have the set. There's a interesting comment. Like, I would have taken more exception to that comment of anything. What do you mean you rather have the set? But he didn't end up getting Sirius Black, so he was a little disappointed in that. And then that's when Harry calls him out for the prejudiced nature of, like, dude, what are you saying? Why are you so against Muggleborns? And he's like, I just said your mother was one of my favorites. Like, calm down. I'm not prejudiced against them. They can be phenomenal witches and wizards. And then he mentions Lily again, and then he mentions Dirk Cresswell, who is the head of the Goblin Liaison Office, and how he gets news on what's going on in Gringotts and all of that. So he mentions another Muggle-born student that he really, really enjoyed. So you get a little different vibe from Slughorn. Mm-hmm. And I like, you get two distinctions as to how he's maybe not like other Slytherins. He just said he's in favor of Muggleborns. He's not prejudiced towards them in any way, seems like. And then the other thing is he's running from Death Eaters. If he was the head of Slytherin, why are you running from primarily, not all, but primarily Slytherins? You'd think they would have a generally kind disposition towards you. If you're, the head, you were the former head of Slytherin House, you probably taught some of them. You probably had some of them in your house. They probably look fondly upon you. Why are you running from them? So that's like two interesting takes from Slughorn that you get right out the gate. So that's kind of interesting. You get Horace's favorites. He gestures towards a wall that has a bunch of photos framed and signed. And we get back to my autograph comment from before. This is a perfect chance for him to get an autograph from Dumbledore. That's not on his paycheck, probably. So he points out specifically Barnabas Cuff, the editor of the Daily Prophet, Ambrosius Flume, who he just mentions is a part of Honeydukes, I'm assuming the owner of Honeydukes, and Gwynog Jones, captain of the Holyhead Harpies, who gives him tickets whenever he's in town or they're playing or whatever. So you get this kind of, you're getting a sense of who Slughorn is very early in this interaction. And then Slughorn mentions that he wants to lay low, not join Hogwarts due to presumed allegiance to the Order of the Phoenix, but also notes that he has no desire to join the Death Eaters. Like, it's a pretty clear delineation he makes. He wants to stay a neutral party in all of this and stay out of the fight. What do we think about that?
It's a bit of a cowardly take.
Ooh, fighting words from Jenn.
I think another way to also frame it would be Slytherins are known for their self-preservation.
Yeah.
He probably sees this as the way to protect himself the most. It seems like it's less from not wanting to declare an allegiance, but more so not wanting to put a target on his back, because he obviously doesn't want to be a Death Eater. He can't join the Order, because if he does, target on his back. So
Right.
He's thinking easiest way to handle this is just to remain a neutral party, keeping in line with his Slytherin traits.
Interesting. Okay.
Stay on the down low.
Stay on the down low.
Yep.
I think honestly, if you're a retired, you have a neutral disposition anyway, I don't think it's entirely unwise to try to continue that said neutral stance.
Yeah, and the other thing too, it's like he has this whole list of people that he keeps around him for himself. Like, I'm sure he doesn't want to start, like, not necessarily disappointing, but like losing maybe some of those connections that he has for those, like the benefits that he gets from them.
Yeah.
So
He does have kind of a melancholy moment where he's like, I haven't actually been in touch with any of these people in about a year because I've been on the run. I haven't been in one place. Because Harry makes the hilarious connection of like, you're running from the Death Eaters, but they haven't found you when you're corresponding with all these famous people. Like, they must be the dumbest Death Eaters ever.
right.
And he's like, well, no, I haven't actually been interacting with them. And you can tell it's like, it hurts him that he hasn't been able to be in contact with any of his favorite past students or his just favorite people in general. Because it's not just his students. He's really good at this like web or 6 degrees of separation or whatever, where he's like, oh, I know this person, you can like this person, and then you connect him, and then you connect him, and then all of a sudden, Slughorn might have known one student and turned it into 3 connections, or 4 connections, or whatever. And it kind of hurt. His social life is struggling a bit. But yeah, there's that moment of reflection, and then Albus just pops back in the room, and Horace is like, oh, did you have like trouble with anything? You've been gone a minute. And Albus is like, no, I was just reading the literature. One of my favorite quotes in all of Harry Potter. One of my favorites. Mollie's got to be right up there. You want to take the quote?
Oh my god. I will take this one. I do love knitting patterns.
I love it. It's one of the greatest quotes. And to be fair, I dropped the ball here. I should have had this quote in our intro, and I messed up. I honestly, it's been a minute since I've read this book. I didn't think this was actually in the book. I thought this was a total movie thing that wasn't in the book, and they did it both.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh man, I kind of dropped the ball on this one. I kind of wish I had put that quote in there.
That's okay.
Ugh, my bad. I love the quote. It's a fantastic quote.
It's so in line with his character.
Oh yeah.
I love it so much.
I do love knitting batting. That's great. That's fantastic.
Which is really interesting because, like, if you ever read knitting patterns, they really don't make sense, until you start actually knitting. So I love that he just comes out with that quirk, like, yeah, I'm reading about knitting, like, I'm reading a knitting pattern. Like, okay, all right.
So what you're saying, Mollie, is the read that you're getting on Dumbledore here, the things left unsaid is he knits in his spare time? Is that what you're telling me?
That is what I'm telling you.
That's the news that you're breaking on Hogwarts a podcast right now?
So.
Okay.
I think so.
All right.
Yeah. You
Albus?
heard it live here.
Albus knitting in his spare time.
Yeah.
Long story short, Slughorn takes the job. Slughorn does decide to take the job. I think it's safe to say that Albus dangled Harry kind of in front of him as a lure to catch a fish, and it seemed to have worked. He does say that he wants a pay rise, which I love that terminology of a pay rise, not a raise. It's great. I love it. It's such British.
I never even noticed that reading.
No?
It. No, just my brain filled in raised.
Yeah, I do that too. It's just an A, but yeah. Albus says that Slughorn does like his comforts, the company of famous and powerful people, and he always had a knack for choosing students who end up becoming outstanding in their pursuits. And he does have a club that he invites them to. And he doesn't honestly discriminate there either. Whether they're smart, charming, ambitious, talented, no matter the house, he wants them in his little circle. So I always thought of this as like, oh, he's like a one-man professional conference.
Yeah.
Like, if you've ever been to a professional conference, it's all you need to do is go to Horace Slughorn and it's like done. The connections are made. You don't really have to do much.
You don't have to go booth to booth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. And the insinuation here is that Harry is going to be collected. He thinks Slughorn's going to want him in this little club of his. So be prepared. Then we get another Harry and Albus moment as they leave Budleigh Babberton. And this is the end when we go from flighty temptress of adventure to small little spider-covered broom closet. And Albus does tell Harry that both him and Sirius are proud of how he's been able to handle everything after what an experience the end of his 5th year was. I mean, that would be a lot for anybody to handle, adult or otherwise. And Harry comes out with this quote of, "It's just hard to realize he won't write to me again," which I think through all of this chapter and all of this book so far, you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is interesting. This is cool. Oh, that's a nice little tidbit. This is a nice little character note. And then all of a sudden, like, you just get slammed to the face with emotion all of a sudden.
Gut punch.
Yeah, and it hits you hard. And it's like Harry finally opening up to that, like, oh, this doesn't feel good. You know, this is like something that I'll never, ever get again. And I think all of us have kind of been in that situation where it's like, oh, we don't get that ever. And that's like a part that won't ever come back into our lives. And that sucks. That feeling is not fun to have. And it's I think a rare moment where Harry is really, truly, wholeheartedly honest with himself. And he actually says it out loud, which almost never happens ever. So I don't know. It's just an interesting moment and that you just get out of almost nowhere in this book.
It's like a real true look at grief.
Yeah.
It's just straight up like, he's never going to write to me again.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that it comes out of nowhere too. Like,
Yeah.
I think it makes it even more emphatic with that. But it also goes back to like he's showing character growth.
Yeah.
It's nice to see him having insight into these things, and they're not easy things, and especially framing it in that way where it's like he's able to say it so simply, but it's such a strong statement.
I think it's also one of those things where in book 5, you get him in his head so much so that when it does eventually bubble up and boil over, it boils over. It explodes out of him and it doesn't come across in maybe the best way. Here, him just being able to say this out loud, I think frees him in a way to finally be open to accepting that, yes, that part of you is gone now. And it's like acceptance in a way.
yeah. And I think those moments when you're going through a grief like that, they hit you at weird times. Like, it's not always like a calculated pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You know? So it's like all of a sudden you'll have a moment where you're just like, oh my God, like that's never going to happen again. You know?
That's so true. It hits you at like the weirdest, most random times.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like being in a broom cupboard.
Exactly.
Like,
with a guy in a hat with spiders.
I was about to say, I love the acknowledgement of he's like, I tip my hat to you, but I drench you in spiders. It's like, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
What a moment.
Exactly.
oh yeah, that's weird. No, I think to your point, Jen, about character growth, I think it's a really important mark in his character growth that he's able to say it out loud and acknowledge it and accept that is a part of his life. And there's still more life to be had. So I think it's an important character step. Speaking of being open and honest, Albus also suggests that Harry tell Ron and Hermione about the prophecy. And he asks if Harry had done that yet, and Harry said no. And I think it's an interesting comment by Albus where he reflects on it out loud, and he's like, on the whole, that's probably a wise decision, but I think you need to. And I just find that in itself as an interesting comment. He's like, it's probably wise to keep major information like that probably close to the vest. That's probably more wise than not. But your friends need to be looped in. I don't know. What do you guys think about that comment?
I thought it was nice of him to recognize that he needs support. And I think it's also nice given it shows the complete 180 from his position in the last book. Because in the last book, it was all about he needed to be secret and keep things from Harry, and Harry needed to keep things secret, and everybody's keeping everything secret all the time. And I think it's a nice acknowledgement from Dumbledore that A, that didn't work, and also B, acknowledging like these are your two closest friends. They are going to need to support you with this through your grief, through everything. Like you might as well just tell them instead of having them find out in some other way.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, it's just like, I think Dumbledore knows that Harry's going to need them eventually, and he's got to establish that. And if he were to go off on an island, he's probably not going to survive this whole matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
we do get the knowledge, and I do remember my first reaction to this when I read it. The private lessons with Albus. We get the note that Albus will want to teach Harry in person this year as opposed to last year when he decided to not do that specifically. And I remember when I read this, I was over the moon. I'm like, oh, this is going to be real good. Like, there's no bad outcome here. This is going to only be awesome. And I can't wait until we get into those lessons. But yeah, I just always remember my first reaction to that little tidbit from Albus. I was so ramped up. I was also ramped up that we're getting OWL grades soon. He's like, oh yeah, those should actually be coming today. Yeah, later today. Those should be coming. Because Harry's like, oh, I won't be able to. Oh, you mean I won't have any more lessons with Snape, Professor Snape, because I won't be taking potions. I didn't get whatever outstanding in my OWL. And he's like, oh, don't count your owls before they come because they're coming. So that's kind of an interesting kind of back and forth there about OWL grades. Maybe we'll get them in the next chapter. Who knows? He also tells Harry, Julie would be so proud of this comment. If I know Julie, which I do. Harry must keep the invisibility cloak on him all the time. No exceptions. Inside the school, outside of the school, wherever.
It only took 6 years.
And Dumbledore talking to him in a broom closet face to face. Keep that with you at all times. That might be Julie's favorite quote of this entire chapter. I'm pretty sure. Or this one, the one that follows up, which is essentially don't do anything stupid at the Burrow. Molly and Arthur have taken on a lot of difficulties with having you here. We had to place a lot of protections on the Burrow. There's a lot of increased ministry involvement with owls getting searched and all kinds of things going on. It would be really, really rude of you to throw that all away by doing something dumb. Stay at the Burrow. Be chill. Just chill.
just chill.
And that's where we kind of end. So anything you guys want to double back on from the non-spoiler or touch on? No more spider comments from the broom closet?
I have one thing I'd like to touch on.
Sure.
Okay, so earlier in this chapter, we were discussing potential Harry Potter jams.
Yes.
So I have
yes,
some
we
names
were.
for these jams.
Ooh.
You came up. Oh, look at you! Wow. Okay.
I was on a roll right now.
All right. Let's get them.
So I'll start out with my less groany ones. Chudley Cannon Orange. If we're doing like an orange jam.
I like it. I like it.
I was thinking like Gropberry for like a strawberry kind of thing.
Gropberry.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. All right.
All right, and then you're gonna have to go with me a little bit on this one, but Madame Pomfrey, because pom is
Pomegranate?
apple.
Oh.
Pomegranate would also work.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was thinking apple, but either one would be good.
Maybe
Okay.
it's a mixture of the two.
Yes. Okay, and then again, my good ones. So instead of creature, you have peacher.
Ooh.
Nice.
Uh,
Like it.
Serious blackberry.
Like it.
Ooh.
I like
and
it.
Severus grape.
I like it.
Sever's grape. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Well done.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Well done.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
This has been
Quite right.
we have embarked on an adventure in this opening chapter, this opening non-spoiler. We hope you've enjoyed all of our tangents through this non-spoiler.
Hopefully it wasn't a fiasco.
We've had a fun time. We hope you've also enjoyed it. And we will hit the break sound and then jump into the spoiler section. So we will be right back. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Where is he? Where's my 1-1?
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 4, Horace Slughorn. And before we get to opinions on the man himself, I just wanted to make a note that this is one of those rare occasions where, well, I guess it's not terribly rare for this book, I suppose, but we get all three Deathly Hallows in the same room. We get, obviously, Dumbledore has his Elder Wand. Harry has this invisibility cloak in his pocket, which I still find it odd that you can stuff it into a pocket so easily. And then the ring that Dumbledore is wearing features a stone in it. That stone is the Resurrection Stone. So all three are in the same room, and I would assume the only one aware of this is Albus himself. Which, with what we know in the seventh book, I feel like Albus should do something with this, elaborate on this a little bit more, something.
I like the idea that the only reason that he's asking Harry to bring the invisibility cloak is just for like a trivia question.
Wait, I just had a thought. He says in the beginning of this chapter, "Don't worry about it, you're with me."
I was actually going to bring that up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Marla, I beat you to it.
No,
Go ahead,
no,
you
that's
finish it
fine.
off.
No, it's just like the fact that all three Deathly Hallows are together. There's no reason for Harry to worry because technically they're the masters of death.
Yeah.
At the moment.
That's a really good point.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I just thought of that just now.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up.
Wow,
Yeah,
that is crazy.
yeah.
That is such a cool, like, little tie-in that I never thought of ever.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Obviously, the ring comes back in a pretty epic way. So the thing with Dumbledore here is he obviously gets attracted to. He recognizes what the marking on the stone is as the Deathly Hallows symbol, and he gets attracted to the ring and what that stone can do. Thus, foregoing his better wisdom and judgment, and puts it on, and then the curse and all of that. Like, it's definitely crossed his mind. Like, all three are in my grasp. Like, I have all three. I could be the single master of death. But I think he comes to the wisdom that I'm only supposed to have one. Like, first of all, he believes he doesn't need the cloak because he's powerfully magic enough that he can figure it. Both him and with the wand he has, he can essentially do what the cloak does, even though technically he can't because that's the cloak, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, he technically can't because death will still see him.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So I think that's the folly of maybe like Dumbledore and Voldemort is like they think they're powerful. I guess that's the thing with the wand too. You think you're powerful enough that you can literally beat death, except you can't, and that's what the cloak is for. So I guess that's that little Dumbledore being naive for once in a million years of like, I don't really need the cloak. Well, yeah, you do, but he's discarding it anyway. And he realizes I can't be near the stone because I can't be trusted with it. That's a problem. The only thing I am appropriate for is the wand because I won't abuse that power.
I also gotta wonder too, like, how the heck did Voldemort get a Horcrux curse on the Resurrection Stone, considering, like, I would assume that, like, the Resurrection Stone's magic is a lot more powerful than Horcrux curse. Like, that I find really interesting. Unless the Resurrection Stone is just Horcrux in general. Because it has souls in it. It's like the most powerful Horcrux.
It's everybody's Horcrux.
Yeah.
It's like,
But
can revive any soul.
if he destroyed it with the sword, shouldn't that have destroyed everybody?
Yeah.
Or is it like a last in, first out kind of thing?
Well, it's probably us.
He just keeps hitting it more people.
I don't know why, but when you said that, Beetlejuice just came to mind. Like the waiting room.
Right,
yeah. And Beetlejuice. Please take a number.
I don't know how it works.
Yeah. It's a mystery.
Yep. It's magic.
Do you think when he destroys the ring that anything happens? Like, if he cracks the resurrection stone, is there any, like, residual magic from that? And also to your point of, like, breaking the stone and its, like, function or whatever, or its residual magic, can you ever actually break a gift from death? Like resurrection stone, wand, or cloak. Can you actually break? Because think of all the things Harry has done in that darn cloak, and it never unravels. It never like
Right,
scratches or rips.
Right.
We don't see it.
Right.
Well, we see the stone getting
Cut.
cut,
Right.
but other than that, we don't.
But then it doesn't necessarily like break it because it still works for Harry when he needs to use it later.
Right.
Yeah.
So, can a gift from death break? I'd assume it doesn't seem like it. So,
Well, break is in what sense?
break as in becomes unusable.
Okay.
Well, now, too, if you think about it, you have, like, 2 resurrection stones now.
Yeah, how does that work?
If it got split in half,
Yeah.
and they still work.
Because that I know he just drops in the middle of the Forbidden Forest and just whatever.
Yeah, it's gone.
Just left to be.
All of this is confusing to me because I understand not wanting to, like, hold on to those things, but it's weird to just leave the resurrection stone to me in the forest somewhere. I don't know why. I mean, I guess it's fine. I don't know. I don't know how any of that works.
You know how in the last chapter you were poking holes in
Yep.
the like summoning food out of nowhere law of magic?
Yes.
I feel like in the next book, or even in this book, because we obviously get into it a little bit with Horcruxes, and there's Hallows everywhere in this book. I think we're going to get into it in the next book of there's some loopholes with Hallow magic. Anyway, that's our 2 cents on all 3 Hallows being in the same room at the same time. Now, I turn it over to you two, who love this book so much, and we get the chapter on meeting Horace Slughorn. What are your thoughts on Horace Slughorn, generally? And then, Jen, I want your specific thoughts on, as a Slytherin, what are your views as the head of house, Horace Slughorn? Molly.
I mean, I just like Slughorn as a character. I think he's really fascinating and interesting, and I love the redemption he does for Slytherins in general. Like, he's not, like... I feel like up until this book, all you see from Slytherins is, like, oh, purebloods, and they're terrible, and they're all, like, Draco and Lucius, and they all become Death Eaters, and then you have Slughorn, where his idea of power, leadership, and all of that is just having connections that he benefits from. And I don't think that's a horrible thing. I think everybody kind of wants to be able to, like, connect and have connections with people, go to conferences, and do better for themselves. So Plus, too, I think he's a really gifted wizard. It's fun to see him, like, in the potions classes and doing all that stuff.
I did like how Albus was very vague in Harry's presence of like, oh, come back and do what you were really skilled at. Do what you were really good at. And Harry just assumes it's Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Right.
Because that's the opening that he knows about.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting that Dumbledore leaves that vague.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I like Slughorn. So the first time I read this book, I didn't really care too much for Slughorn. On all subsequent rereads, I like him more and more. And I'm going to echo a lot of the points that Mollie just made, where he is the first shining example of a Slytherin who is not overtly evil, prejudiced, a bully. He definitely has all of the Slytherin traits, but I love how you can see they're woven in a completely different way, in a different context, and it's not all of this perspective from Harry where it's like, oh, all the Slytherins are evil, and it's like, okay, finally we have someone who's challenging this perspective now, and someone who's going to be challenging it who has like a personal tie to him because, oh, he really likes his mother. So right off the bat, you've got Harry is going to have to find a way to relate to Slughorn in a different way. He's not being bullied. He's not being, made fun of in the halls. He's not having to deal with people insulting, people that he cares about. On the contrary, you've got this Slytherin figure who is paying a huge compliment to his mom. So he's not expecting it, but now he's going to have to reconcile with this non-evil, for lack of a better way to put it, Slytherin. On top of all of that, Slughorn seems really smart. He seems really cunning. He definitely, like what Mollie was saying, takes a lot of power through his connections. But I think also one of the things that's really interesting about how he goes about those connections is he gains a lot. He personally really likes and benefits from most of his connections, but he also is establishing connections between other people. So he's not doing 100% of his slug club for himself. He's definitely benefiting from those connections, and he's benefiting from feeling important, but he's also helping all of the people in his club also make connections, get further in their careers.
He's doing good by his students.
Right. He's actually taking the power-hungry aspect of Slytherins, but also being benevolent with it and kind of giving it away to other people too.
Spreading the wealth around a little bit.
Right. So it's in that sense, it's not a bad quality to have.
He's using power for good.
Yeah. And it also doesn't seem like he's using power to try to like extort things from people. He's helping people get into some position and then they're,
it's a little kickback, but
yeah, he's getting a kickback, but it's not necessarily like a.
It's not a crazy kickback. It's
it's
his favorite candy on Christmas, or his tickets to a game that doesn't really cost anything to the player, or whatever.
Right. It's not an all-consuming, power-hungry thing.
Right.
He likes to feel important, but it's not. He's not blackmailing anybody.
Right. No, I think that's a really good point about him doing some good things for his students too. It's a little self-centered, but it's not in a malicious way. It's just, I think a lot of people would probably try to do something similar. I like Slughorn a lot, and I will talk about something that you mentioned, but you didn't really go in on, is him as a wizard. Just his magical ability, I think, goes underrated. He's obviously just as good, if not a better potions master than Snape. And obviously and this is maybe the most remarkable thing I think of, is you think he's escaped with the Slytherins in the Deathly Hallows Battle of Hogwarts. He comes back, and not only does he just come back, he tries to rewrite one of his greatest regrets in his life by going, no, I helped cause this problem, indirectly or directly, however you want to frame that, which we will get into that argument later in this book. But he's trying to rewrite one of his greatest regrets, and he tries to own up to it directly. He goes straight to the man himself. And granted, he's with McGonagall and with Kingsley, two of the other... Think about it, two of the most prominently gifted witches and wizards that we know of, right? he's right there with them battling the man himself, which takes a level of bravery that not many associate with the House of Slytherin. So I think Slughorn should get a little bit more respect as far as the general fandom goes. People normally, if they want to put him down, they usually point to the fact that, well, Slug Club is more just him being selfish and creating his own things. But I love what you said, Jen, about he uses it, but he also helps a lot of people with it. So I think that's a great counter to that negative.
I think it's also interesting for me that the kickbacks that he gets aren't things that are done at anyone's expense.
Yeah.
Like to what you were saying, where it's like free tickets to a game or like his favorite candy. Like those are fairly benign.
Or just
things.
like a little information on the behind the scenes. Oh, what's going on at the Prophet?
Yeah.
Like gossiping. Right. Not even like real information, actionable information. It's just like...
I have worked at companies who were worse than him. Like, so it blows my mind of like he is, I wouldn't go so far as to call him selfish. He's very self-important.
Yeah.
But I've worked with people who have politicked in much more nefarious ways than that. Like, because a lot of what he's doing is just politicking.
Mm-hmm. But
not to anyone's expense.
Right. No, and we'll see throughout his year teaching that we see a stark contrast between him and Snape and how they run a potions class. Snape is obviously very biased towards students of a certain house and perpetuates, again, the word was in this chapter of prejudice. He perpetuates that prejudice of house versus house. And Gryffindor is better than Hufflepuff all the time, and Slytherin is better than Gryffindor all the time, and blah, 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 which is stupid. And Slughorn in his class seems to not do any of that. If you have the answer, great. That's awesome. He doesn't really pick on anybody. It's meritocracy, if anything else. And granted, it's definitely meritocracy. He definitely runs a meritocracy where it's like, oh, if you're good, that's great, and if you're bad, he does kind of treat you a little. It's more like a competency things.
Yeah.
It's definitely a competency thing where the more competent people get his respect and adoration, and the less competent people are shoved to the side. But it has nothing to do with blood status or house that you're in or any of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and again, there are a lot of teachers, and Elizabeth, I guess, could speak to this better than any of us can, but there are probably teachers that do a lot of the same thing, where it's like, you're a smart kid. Yes. You're clearly leaving your work derelict for whatever purpose. Not my favorite, or, whatever. So I think it's interesting to see that contrast as we go forward between him and Snape and how they run a potions class.
I think he also doesn't get enough credit for finally giving Harry the memory. Because I think a lot of people think of that as a weakness, and I definitely was one of those people who thought that it was a weakness of his and a character flaw. I mean, it is a character flaw, but held it against Slughorn that he kept that for so long and that he kept obfuscating it and resisting Harry's attempts to get the memory from it. But I think it was actually fairly brave of him to come around and actually give it to Harry, because he had to go against his own nature of self-preservation and preserving the image that he had and that he wanted other people to have in order to give that up. So I think that actually does take a decent amount of courage.
Yeah, I love that take. Molly, you and I have had numerous conversations on memory magic throughout this podcast. And I think that idea that you brought up, Jen, about him being strong enough to give up the memory finally is, wouldn't it be nice to alter a memory so it doesn't make you as anxious or as sad or as angry or as full of regret? It'd be wonderful to just switch your memory around so you don't remember a mistake that you made sometime in your life. But at the same time, we saw here in this chapter Harry being open enough to finally admit something out loud And that's the first step towards a level of acceptance. And I guess my example would be if Slughorn doesn't do this, if he doesn't give up that memory and he keeps it altered, does he show up at the end of Deathly Hallows and help out? Or does he keep pushing that aside like, no, I didn't help create that. That wasn't my problem. I didn't contribute. And you just deny. Instead, here he chooses, although begrudgingly and a little drunk, he chooses to let that memory go and become whole again and fully accept all of the guilt and regret that he has over that moment in his life, thus being the first step to accepting that about himself too, which, to your point, is hard. And that requires a level of courage and strength that I don't think many people appreciate. And then that probably does send him to the Battle of Hogwarts and his decision to rejoin that battle in an epic way.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I do. I agree. Yeah.
Slughorn is a really good character, I think.
He's I think he gets more interesting like the more that you dig at him.
100%, yeah.
Well, and that's what we are here for, Jen, is to... we are here to dig into characters probably a little too much and flesh out all of their, motivations and emotions and thought processes. And I honestly think that's one of the things we do better here than a lot of other places. Because I think it's something unique that we do that most people are just like, Slughorn, he's a selfish guy that's only out for himself and self-importance and blah, 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 blah. And they don't ever dig deeper. So that's what you get here at Hogwarts, a podcast. Anybody have any other thoughts, comments, concerns?
Nope.
No.
Everybody's good?
Yep.
We will end it here then for Chapter 4, Horace Slughorn. Fret not, there's a lot more of Horace Slughorn in this book to dive into. So we are going to be back next week with Chapter 5. Please reach out on Twitter and Instagram. Let us know what you think. Comment on Spotify. Participate in our polls on Spotify. We want to hear what you guys think on Jen's jams idea, on our escape room, on my transition from jams to Inferi. How do you think of that went? We want to hear it all. So let us know if you feel so inclined. You can leave a voice message with a comment or a question, and we can put your voice on this podcast and respond to it accordingly. You can also click the link to support this podcast and donate financially, which would be amazing because we put in a lot of time and effort into this. So that's welcome as well. But otherwise, just share the podcast. Keep it growing. We are stunned at the growth that we've seen in the podcast, so we really appreciate all that support. And with that, we will end Chapter 4. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.